Ask an AI to do something and it stops you cold. I can't help with that. So you reword the exact same request, just a little differently, and suddenly it goes ahead and does it. Same model, same goal, different wording. It feels like you outsmarted a strict teacher with one clever sentence. What is actually happening is stranger than that, and it reveals something important about how these systems make any decision at all. To be clear up front, this is not a how-to. The point is to understand why the behavior is so wildly inconsistent, because that inconsistency tells you a lot about what these models really are, and why you should not lean on them as if they had firm, reliable rules sitting inside. Start with the surprise. The refusal is not a rule. When the model says I can't help with that, it is not consulting a rule book, ticking a box, and tripping a hard block. That sentence, I can't help with that, is just more predicted text. It is generated the exact same way as every other sentence the model produces, by guessing likely words one after another. The refusal is not a gate the model slams into. It is an answer the model writes, word by word, like everything else. And that means there is no rulebook inside it, at least not in the way you are picturing. So where does the refusing behavior even come from? It was trained in. After the model learns language, it goes through a second phase where humans show it piles of examples. This kind of request, you should decline, and here is a good way to decline it. This other kind, you should help with. The model soaks up that pattern, the same way it soaked up everything else about language. It learns what a refuse-worthy request tends to look like and what a good refusal tends to sound like. But notice the crucial thing. It learned a pattern, not a law. It learned the shape of the things it happened to be shown. Now here is why the wording flips it. Picture the same underlying request in two phrasings, side by side. One is blunt, and it lines up neatly with the shape of the examples the model was trained to refuse. It pattern matches, the refusal becomes the most likely continuation, and out comes I can't help with that. The other phrasing is softer, framed differently, wrapped in context that looks a lot more like the examples it was trained to help with. Now the helpful continuation is the more likely one. Same goal sitting underneath, but the surface pattern quietly tipped the scales the other way. That is the whole thing in 4 words. A pattern, not a rule. A real rule does not care how you phrase the request. It checks the substance and returns the same verdict every single time. A pattern cares enormously about the surface, about wording and framing and tone, because surface is all it ever learned to read. So changing the words really can change the answer, even when your actual intent has not moved an inch. A useful way to picture it is a bouncer who never actually learned the rules of the club and instead just watched, thousands of times, which people got turned away and which got waved in until he had a gut feel for it. He is not checking IDs against a list. He is going on vibe. Dress and act like the people who usually got in and you are in. Match the look of the ones who got refused and you are out. Same person, different jacket, different result. That is roughly what happens inside the model when a reworded request suddenly sails through. You did not beat a rule. There was never a rule. There was a trained gut feeling, and you changed how you looked to it. And that gut feeling was shaped by people, with all the fuzziness that implies. The examples it learned from were written and rated by humans making judgment calls, and the model averaged across thousands of them. So its sense of what to refuse is not crisp or principled. It is a blurry composite of all those human opinions, smeared into a pattern. 2 requests that any person would treat exactly the same can end up on opposite sides of that blurry line, purely because of how the words happen to land. So why does this matter for you, beyond the party trick? A few reasons, and they cut in different directions. First, it is a clean demonstration that the model has no stable inner policy. It is not weighing your request against principles it holds. It is reacting to patterns. That alone should lower your trust in it as any kind of consistent judge. If a tiny rewording can flip its decision, then that decision was never solid to begin with. Second, it explains a lot of everyday frustration. When the model refuses something completely reasonable, it is often not making a thoughtful, considered call. Your phrasing just happened to land near the shape of something it was trained to avoid. A clearer, more specific rewording often fixes it, not because you tricked anything, but because you helped the pattern finally match what you actually meant. And there is a flip side that the people building these systems live with every single day. If the guardrails are patterns rather than hard rules, then they are soft by their very nature. They hold most of the time and they leak some of the time, which is exactly why companies layer extra checks on top, separate systems, watching the input, and the output, instead of trusting the model to police itself from the inside. It is also why safety in these systems is an ongoing, messy, never quite finished effort rather than a solved problem. You cannot just write the rule down once and walk away. You are forever shaping a pattern, and a pattern can always be approached from some angle it did not quite cover. This is also why you should be careful about reading too much into a single refusal or a single answer. People sometimes treat an AI saying no as if it carries real weight, as if the machine considered the question and reached a judgment. It did not. It pattern matched. The no and the yes are both just the most likely thing to say given how you happen to phrase it. Neither one is a verdict. Both are guesses wearing the costume of a decision. The takeaway is simple, and it is the same lesson as everything else about these tools. There is no little person inside making careful, principled decisions. There is a pattern machine reacting to the surface of your words. When it refuses, that is a prediction, not a judgment. When a reword changes its mind, that is not a crack in its logic, because there was never any rigid logic there to crack in the first place. It is a system that reads shape and tone, all the way down. So the next time an AI blocks one phrasing and then happily answers a reworded one, you will know it is not being inconsistent by accident. It is showing you its true nature. It does not hold rules. It recognizes patterns, and patterns bend with the wording. Understanding that one fact will make almost every strange, contradictory thing these models do feel a great deal less mysterious. And that is exactly what we are here for, one clear idea at a time.